Anchor Text. Grandfather's Story by Catherine McPhillips. It was a normal weekend. The children were in the living room. Homework was done. Adi was at the computer. Kuat was watching a game on television and texting his pals. Noise blasted from Utari's new video game. Mom and Dad came in. They wanted to tell the children something. The children nodded, but didn't lift their eyes from their screens. "We have to go to visit Aunt Sarah. There is going to be a bad storm this weekend, and she needs help to fix her roof," said Mom. "That's fine," said Adi. "I will be able to look after Kuat and Utari. I am 10 after all." "No, you won't," said Dad. "There is a storm coming. You are going to spend the weekend with Granddad." The children looked up from their screens in horror. They stared at their parents. "No, not Granddad's. Please, Mom. Please, Dad. We'll be fine here on our own," they said. "You're going to Granddad's. That's final," said Dad. "I'll drive you there in the morning." The children began to complain, but Mom and Dad had left the room. The children looked at each other. "Look, I don't mean to be rude. I do love Granddad, but he must be the most boring man in the world. All he wants to do is tell old stories," moaned Utari. The next morning, the children got up early. Each of them put some clothes into a bag. They packed all their video games as well. Dad drove them to their grandfather's house. Once the children had settled in, each one started playing video games. Granddad called them to help with the shopping. In the store, the children helped Granddad get the groceries he needed. They helped him put the bags into the car. Storm clouds were forming in the distance. They all wanted to get home early. As soon as they got home, the children began playing their games again. "Why are you playing those games?" asked Granddad. "Wouldn't you like to play outside? The sun is still shining." The children didn't lift their eyes from the screens. "Did I ever tell you about how I met your grandmother?" asked Granddad. There was no answer from the children. "Would you like to hear about the time I spent sailing the seas?" The children didn't lift their heads. "Did I ever tell you the story of how I got this scar?" There was silence from the children. There was nothing but the sounds of video games. Granddad left the room. Later that evening, the storm broke. Heavy rain beat against the windows. Tiny rivers of water flowed through the backyard. Lightning flashed across the sky. Bangs of thunder came next. Suddenly, the lights went out. All the children's screens went black. "Oh no," said Adi. "I nearly had level 12 finished. Now I'll have to start all over again." The children were not happy, but there was nothing anyone could do. It was too early to go to bed. Grandfather started a fire and lit some candles. It wasn't long before the children got bored. "This storm reminds me of that awful night near Kuala Lumpur," said Granddad. The children looked at Granddad in surprise. "We didn't know you were in Kuala Lumpur," said Kuat. "Well, you don't listen to my stories, do you? Would you like to hear how I got this scar?" The children nodded. "Sit back and listen to my story," said Granddad. Granddad began in a quiet voice. "When I was a young man, I wanted to see the world. My father didn't agree, of course. He wanted me to get a job and make some money, but I wanted to see the world. One day, I was down at the docks. I saw a ship being loaded. There was a sign that said, 'Sailors Wanted.' I went up to the captain, and he just said, 'You're hired. Sign here.' I wrote a note and sent it to my parents. Then I found a vacant cabin. In a few hours, We had set sail, and all I could see around me was the ocean. Our first port was Kolkata. The captain gave the orders. He told us what to load and unload. We took on fresh food and water, and soon we set sail again. This time, we were going to Kuala Lumpur. There was a bad storm, just like the one tonight. Our ship's mast broke. When the storm eased, we could just see land in the distance. All we had was one rickety boat. The captain picked 6 of us to row ashore and look for help. We set out for shore, but as we rowed, the storm rose again. Huge waves hit the side of the boat. It was tossed about like a cork. Granddad paused to take a sip of water. The children sat with their eyes wide open. They never knew Granddad had been any further than the grocery store. "Go on, Granddad," said Audie. Granddad's voice was louder now. "A huge wave swept over the boat, and I fell into the water. The other men tried to save me, but everything was blurry. I could see the boat, but I could not get near it. I woke up on a sandy beach on an island. My mouth was dry. Every muscle in my body was sore. I knew I had to get fresh water, so I walked into the jungle. As I walked, it got thicker and darker. I could hear strange sounds that I didn't know. Nothing was familiar." Granddad took another sip of water. "Go on, Granddad," said Kuat. At last, I came to a stream. Was I happy to see it? I got down on my knees and began to drink. Suddenly, from behind me, I heard a quiet growl. I didn't move. I heard it again, but this time it was louder. I looked around. A tiger's 2 eyes were staring into mine. We looked deep into one another's eyes. Just as the tiger was about to jump at me, I grabbed a rock. As his claws tore into my neck, I began to hit him with the rock. I hit him everywhere I could with hard, jerky blows. I knew I was fighting for my life. The tiger decided I wasn't worth the fight. With a final snarl, he turned and walked away. As you might say, it was game over. I fell to my knees and sobbed. The children looked at each other and gasped. They couldn't believe their ears. Granddad, who they thought was just a boring old man, had fought a tiger and won. They broke into wild applause. "Wow! Granddad, I thought things like that only happened in video games," said Audie. Granddad's voice was quiet again. The ship's captain sent a boat to pick me up, and soon I was back home again. But that's how I got my scar. The children looked at Granddad in surprise. They checked out his scar and ran their fingers along the marks the tiger had left. Then they all gave Granddad a hug. Now, who'd like to hear the story of how I met your grandmother? Yay! All the children laughed. Next morning, Mom and Dad arrived early. The children hugged Granddad tightly when they were saying goodbye. On the way home, Auntie asked, "Can we visit Granddad again soon?" "Why?" asked Mom. "Because Granddad is the best storyteller in the world."